Have you gone to the movie theaters since the pandemic? I have, and after the intro, I'm going to tell you about my experience. Welcome back to the DLJonesBooks channel. I'm your host, DL Jones, and on this channel, if this is your first time visiting, I like to talk about all types of story related topics. Anything dealing with different aspects of stories, breaking down different story parts, and just talking about the different story items that I love and things that I've watched or read or played. Because I talk about stories that's in books, video games, movies, and TV shows. If you like watching videos about different aspects of stories and storytelling, make sure you click the subscribe button so you always can come back and find me and see what I'm posting about next. Since the pandemic, for the most part, a lot of the movie theaters have been pretty much shut down. For about the first 4 or 5 months, the state that I live in, the city that I live in, all of the movie theaters have been closed. I'm not even sure if they are open now. I haven't even looked. But if you look at my video, the one where I list my top 5 favorite movies of 2020, there is one movie that's a pretty popular movie that wasn't on my list. And I did see that movie. And that movie is Tenet. Tenet is a movie, most of the movies I've seen this year have been movies that I saw streaming in one way or another, with the exception of a few that I got to see in the theater before the pandemic started, like in January and February and stuff like that. But Tenet is one that it came out, it was released in theaters and it hasn't been released streaming yet. So the only way you can see Tenet as of right now is if you happen to find a theater that was open and you went to that theater and watched it. Now, I'm not super scary when it comes to the pandemic and the virus and stuff, but I do believe in following the rules. I do believe in wearing your mask. I do believe in social distancing. I do believe in trying to limit your contact with people, because regardless of what you think about it, it's real and people are catching it and people are dying from it. So you have to take it with some amount of seriousness. One thing about what is safe, when you talk to people and they try to tell you what they feel safe doing or what things are safe for them to do, one thing you notice is that, and I'm like this too, I'm not excluding myself from this. What happens with a lot of people is if they look at a situation and try to determine what would make them feel safe in that situation, a lot of time that gauge depends on their interest in the thing that they're looking to do. Let's say you're a gym rat. You like going to the gym. This stuff happened and you're like, I can't not go to the gym. So a lot of times once the gym puts certain things in place and try to make it safer, because your interest, your focus is being able to get back on the gym, how you gauge your safety or how safe you feel has a bearing on your interest in going there. Like you may think going to the gym, there's signs always anyway that tells you to wipe down after you use the machine and all of that. And you might look at that stuff and be like, oh, the gym is pretty safe anyway. They always clean the gym. They always have you wipe down afterwards. And for you, that may be safe because your interest lies with wanting to be able to go to the gym. Your mind kind of lets you look at things from a point of, if this is done, it's safe enough for me. Whereas if you're not a gym person, you may look at it and be like, people in there sweating, there's droplets all over the place. How in the world would anybody think that's safe? So how safe you feel in that environment will change depending on what your interests are, what your priorities are. And it's the same way when it comes to grocery store. It's no safer going to a grocery store than going anywhere else, than going to a restaurant or something like that. But you have to buy groceries. So that's something that you have to be like, okay, well, if they do this, I feel safer going to the grocery store. And in all reality, you may not be no safer going to the grocery store, but it's a priority. It's something that's important to you. So your mind kind of adjusts your feeling of safety when it goes there, because you know that that's what you need to do. You have to go and buy your oodles and noodles, But the movies is the same way. Now, I really like movies. I love going to the movies. I before the pandemic and stuff, I used to go like maybe once a week. I would go see a new release almost every week, every weekend. I would go. I didn't have to even have anybody with me to go. I'll go alone if I wanted to. Actually, a lot of times I'm an introvert, so I don't have no problem at all going to the movies by myself. Is better than having to wait for somebody in some cases. But anyway, I would go often. I love watching movies in the movie theater, but at the same time, I don't mind watching them at home either. So it wasn't a situation where I felt like, I absolutely had to go to the movies to see it. If it was available for me to watch at home, I would gladly watch it at home, and not have to worry about if I'm going to catch COVID by going sitting in the theater in the dark with a bunch of people that I don't know. So when Tenet came out and it was only in the movie theaters, I waited a couple of weeks trying to wait to see if there was going to be some news about it being dropped on some streaming service, and the news never came. It seemed like they were adamant that this was going to be a movie release, a movie theater release only situation. So I was like, okay, I want to see Tenet. This is the movie of the year. It's the only one that actually did release that is supposed to be the one that everybody is supposed to go see. So I went and saw it. At the time, the movie theaters in my city, in my state, they were still closed. A lot of the theaters are still closed. AMC was still closed. All of the other theaters in my state, in my city, were closed. So the only option I had was to go to a drive-in. There was a couple of pop-up drive-ins in Charlotte that I could have gone to, but at the time that I was looking, well, the drive-ins weren't in Charlotte, but they were close enough, in and around Charlotte. But the time that I was looking, Tenet wasn't playing at any of those. When I first looked into it, it was, but then that particular weekend when I decided I was going to go see it, Tenet wasn't playing in any of those. Now, if you look at the map, you'll see that Charlotte is actually not that far from North Carolina. About a good hour drive, you're in South Carolina. It's actually less than an hour. In South Carolina, they didn't have restrictions on movie theaters. The movie theaters were open. And so I did some research and I was looking to try to see what kind of stuff they had in place for COVID safety and all of that kind of stuff. And I found a theater that I was kind of satisfied with what I was reading. I was reading the comments and stuff, what people say. So I went to the theater. And I'll tell you how my experience was. Okay, so I get to the theater. They had what they called a touchless setup. You had to go to a machine, a kiosk, and you had to order your ticket at the kiosk. And then once you ordered your ticket at the kiosk, it showed up on your phone. You had to have like the phone app or whatever on your phone. Afterwards, you walk in, you go to the ticket. It wasn't a ticket taker there, but there was a person behind like a booth, and you would go to that booth. That person had on a mask, and you would hold your phone up with the QR code, and the person would hold up the little thing and scan the code, and then they're like, okay, you're good to go. They'll tell you which theater it's in. And also, if you wanted a snack, popcorn, drink, or anything like that, you order that at the same place where you scanned your ticket. And it was just a screen, and you just pressed the button on the screen on which items that you wanted. And then you would go and sit down in the movie theater. So when I got to the movie theater, there weren't that many people in there. I want to say it was probably 8 people in the theater total. I was alone. And then there were like 3 or 4 other groups of 2. And they were spread we was well away from each other. We was way far from each other. Now, in this particular situation, a lot of people probably didn't realize that theater was open, so they probably wasn't getting a lot of traffic. Now people are getting a little used to COVID, and people are getting a lot bolder, and they're doing more. But back then was still when everybody was kind of really, their awareness of it and being safe was a lot more heightened then than it is now, even though it's no better now than it was then. But now people are just used to it. They're living with it now. I went to the movie. I sat in my seat, same seat that I always sit in when I go to the movie theater. I always sit on the very top row in the middle. I do that every time. For some reason, I don't like for people sitting behind me in the theater, so I always like to sit on the very top row. Before the movie started, a few minutes into waiting, one of the people came in. Several people, they came in. They had masks on, and they walked up to each person to try to find out which person ordered what thing. And, and it's like, I guess they had like a notepad or something so they can note it. So the movie started, watching the movie. A few minutes into the movie, they come back and they had like your popcorn and your drink or whatever you ordered, and they bring it out to each person. Now, one thing I noticed about this is that, like, let's say they came out and they had food for two different people. Like they had, like this happened with me. They had 2 things of popcorn, and I didn't order any drink, but they had 2 things of popcorn and a drink. So they went to the first person, gave them the popcorn and the drink, and then they came to me and gave me the popcorn and the drink. And I kind of noticed that. Of course, back then was when I was really paying attention to it. I didn't really feel safe doing anything like this at that time. So I noticed that. I was like, okay, so she just passed the COVID from that person into me. I was looking at it like that, And then the same thing happened at the end when they came and collected the money for paying for the food and drinks and stuff, because you could always order more. Like at one point, I ended up having to leave because when they brought me the popcorn and stuff, they didn't bring any napkins. So I ended up having to leave and go walking through the hallways trying to find out where they kept the napkins, which they didn't have it in the regular concession area because that was closed down. So I ended up having to find someone and have them go in the back and bring me out some napkins. But for the most part, it was, I felt okay. I kind of feel the same way when I go to any place, is that you'll see people with the mask on. Beyond that, it kind of seems like it breaks down. Especially the longer you're at a place, it kind of seems like it breaks down. People start paying less attention to social distancing. And like in that situation, the person that works at the movie theater, have a mask on, but that person is going from person to person to person, helping them with stuff. So I don't know. I don't know. I guess you got to kind of judge for yourself how that makes you feel. To me, I just notice it. When you have someone that's going from one person to another and to another, and like even when you bought your ticket in the front, you had a kiosk, but it was a touch kiosk, and like the person in front of me touched it, then he walked away, and then I walk up and touch it, then I walk away, and the person behind me touched it, and I walk away. If the first person that bought tickets had the virus, you got a whole line of people that was in contact with them now, but it's stuff like that. It was one of those situations where I watched the movie. It was okay. I had about as much fun as I have with any Christopher Nolan movies. I know people really love Christopher Nolan movies, and I think they're great movies as far as from a filmmaking perspective, but they never are movies that I really leave saying, oh, I really had a good time watching that movie. Most of the time I leave and I'm like, oh, that was a really well-made movie. That's how I am about Christopher Nolan. I know you guys are going to hate me for saying that, but that's just how I am. And I felt the same way with this. I remember reading that a lot of people couldn't understand what people were saying in the movie. I could understand them. I didn't have that problem. But there was a lot of parts of the movie where I was pretty much just zoned out, waiting for the next thing to happen. The action scenes were nice. But yeah, it wasn't bad. I had fun, but it wasn't memorable enough. Like by the time I got home from that trip, I wasn't even thinking about the movie anymore. So I couldn't put that on my list, on my top 5 list in the video I made, previously, but it was okay. But yeah, that's my experience. Did I feel safe? I guess I felt safe enough. I didn't feel safe enough to where I did it again. That was the only time I've done it. I haven't tried to go back, and there are a couple of other movies that are out that's still only in the theaters. Like I want to see New Mutants, even though I heard that wasn't good. But I guess I don't want to see him that bad because I haven't even made an attempt to look to see if there was something I wanted to, take a chance to go into the movie theaters to see since that one trip. But there you have it. That's my experience going to the movies during COVID. Have you gone to the movies during COVID? I would like to hear your experience. Was your experience similar to mine? Did you feel safe? I'd like to know. Let me know in the comments below. And that's the end of the show, and I'll see you next time.